Okay, today I'm going to be talking with C. Ty, who's got a brand new single called Neon Dream about to come out, and he's going to tell us about that, some past projects, and hopefully what it's like to grow up in Louisville, Kentucky, and make music there. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I had to include the Louisville, Kentucky, because I think that's a cool town. Do you still live there?
I do, yeah. Have you been?
You know, I've had friends who have been there and love it and say it should be on the must-go-to list. So I was hoping you could tell me, if you go there, what's the best live music place in Louisville, Kentucky to hear hip, up-and-coming talent?
I would probably say probably this place called Zanzibar, which is a really cool mid-sized venue. They have a lot of vintage arcade machines and pinball machines there. It's just a pretty cool spot overall, and it's kind of tucked away in a neighborhood. It's kind of off the beaten path a little bit, but it's I've seen some of the best shows in town personally there.
Nice. Well, I'll definitely mark that on my go-to list when I'm in that neck of the woods. But what I'm really curious, your single Neon Dream, it's going to hit August 9th. Now, this is kind of a lead-up. You've been putting out stuff, under your own name, as an individual. But leading up to this, you're in an instrumental post-rock band called The Photographic. How has that kind of evolved from, your personal projects up to this new release right now?
So that, I had started that with a friend. It was a two-piece, pretty much drums, and then I would play guitar and synth using a looping pedal that I would loop live with. And then that kind of started fizzling out when my bandmates decided to go to film school at Temple University up in Philadelphia. So that kind of put a pause on things, and I kind of started writing this new stuff. That stuff was all instrumental, more soundtrack, ambient type stuff. And then this stuff I kind of just started evolving. I started feeling more comfortable with writing lyrics, and so I started doing that. We actually played a couple of the songs I'd written as The Photographic still as a couple live shows when Chad was back in town over a summer or something. And then he just started getting busier and busier with film work. So I just kind of took the songs onto my own and kind of repurposed them, re-recorded a lot of things. At the time, they were just rough demos. And, so right now I've been going through a lot of those old projects and just kind of breathing new life into them, so to speak.
Now, you also sing on your projects. That's you I'm hearing on Neon Dream.
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So that's kind of cool. Were you kind of itching, when you're in the instrumental group, were you wanting to add vocals to the band and thought, maybe I should just do that as a solo artist?
Yeah, pretty much. At the time, my intention was I was wanting to make instrumental music. I was listening to a lot of instrumental music at the time, bands like Explosions in the Sky and Mono and Sigur Rós and bands like that. So I was wanting to kind of do more of that. But then, as I started kind of growing it with that, I was missing that vocal element. And I was never really comfortable with my voice, honestly. I'm still working on it. But, I just kind of wanted to take that next step. And I wrote those songs and then played a show once and kind of just pushed myself to sing for the first time. And, once I kind of got over that boundary, I've been becoming more and more comfortable with it and trying to write more lyrics as possible as I can.
Well, when I hear Neon Dream, and I've heard it a few times now, I definitely hear almost an 80s influence in both the music and the singing. Kind of has a dreamy, maybe an early Depeche Mode kind of feel to it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm into Depeche Mode.
So is that conscious?
I love. I would say it could be conscious as well as subconscious, just because that's a lot of stuff I'm drawn to is naturally kind of in that era, yeah, like you said, Depeche Mode, New Order, OMD, like bands like that. Actually, the last show we had played live when I sang some of those songs live when we were still the Photographic was actually with the band the Psychedelic Furs.
Okay. So what I'm really curious, since you play a lot of instruments, I'm assuming a lot of keyboard and what's it like nowadays? There's been such a renewed interest in old school synth sounds. How do you approach going into the studio and creating, a very unique keyboard sound for yourself?
Usually, when it comes to I kind of go back and forth between writing on a guitar or a synth. I also have like an upright piano at my house, so a lot of times I'll sit at that and kind of mess around with melodies and different things, and then basically once I have an idea, then I'll go into the studio and kind of just like record it and then go through a lot of just different synth sounds until I can find what I want and then kind of tweak from there.
So do you think it's kind of like combining real acoustic instruments with the electronic?
I would say so. As far as like most of the stuff I've released so far, I usually am like playing it acoustically, like as far as just like live. Nothing has been really sequenced or arpeggiated or anything. I mean, I have been demoing with some other stuff, maybe for future releases that will have more of that. But I would say, as far as the releases I've done so far, and especially Neon Dream has come from like a pretty organic acoustic approach.
Now, is there a guitar in Neon Dream?
Yeah, there is actually. There's like a couple of guitar parts. There's like a little lead part in the intro, some harmonics in the background. There's like an acoustic guitar kind of in the mid and bridge section, and at the end, yeah, there's actually quite a bit of guitar in it. There's two or three different electric parts and an acoustic part.
Because that was one of the parts I liked. Whenever you add, I think, a guitar layer, I think it elevates it from the usual electronica that's out there. It just has more of, I think, a real element to it. Do you think your guitar sound adds a little more of your personality to the track?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always liked blending guitar with synth and electronic music, which I think is why I've always been, like I said, so drawn to bands like New Order, especially on albums like Brotherhood and Power Corruption and Lies, where they tend to try to meld those sounds a lot together, which I've always been a fan of.
Right. Well, New Order, yeah, I think that's the best comparison. I can totally hear that. Well, who else do people say you sound like? Because that's always the big thing when someone's recommending music. So if someone said, oh, yeah, you'll really like Neon Dream if you like, this band or this artist, who are the people you think are a good gateway to liking your music?
I always have a hard time answering this question. But, I mean, people previously have either said to me or have written about, like, previous songs. I think someone had said Echo and the Bunnymen before. Out of newer bands, a couple people have said that band Wild Nothing. Those are two that come to mind off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. And how about right now, who are the people you're liking? Who do you think is sort of the cutting edge out there in electronic pop?
As far as electronic pop, I think it was last year, I really liked that newer George Clinton record. Trying to think.
George Clinton, you mean Atomic Dog George Clinton?
No, George Clinton with an A.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about George Clinton from the 80s.
No, yeah. No, I feel, yeah, I get the confusion there. But, yeah, as far as, like, newer kind of electronic pop, I liked that record a lot last year. I'm completely blanking, I'm sure. I'm always bad when being put on the spot with current things I've been listening to as far as in that.
I don't know. I can relate to that. No, but that's cool. I'll look that guy up. Clanton with an A, so I'll remember that. Now it's also cool, and I think for a lot of people who work on keyboards and electronic, soundtracks are always a natural part of doing that. And it sounds like you're also pursuing soundtrack work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've always been a fan of soundtrack work, of scoring. Like it's always been an interest of mine.
So do you think that's something where once Neon Dream comes out, you'll be doing some more scoring, or are you in the middle of any scoring projects right now?
I'm not in the middle at the moment, but yeah, I'm always open to like hearing out jobs and looking for those kind of jobs because I really enjoy doing that kind of work. And yeah, just basically like I've always really enjoyed just using music to create moods.
Well, the past few years, I think especially the TV show Stranger Things had such a popular synth soundtrack to it. Do you think you'd be really, drawn to like that style of film?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That I've always really liked a lot more like ambient stuff too as well. That's like pretty straightforward, a lot of like very 80s like oscillating and arpeggiating synths and stuff. Kind of like that movie. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but It Follows. I also really liked that soundtrack as far as a pretty synth-driven soundtrack.
Mhm. Yeah, I could definitely hear, you doing original soundtracks like that, but also your songs just being, dropped into a soundtrack. Because a lot of soundtracks nowadays rely heavily on individual tracks. So even your previous songs, like The Shallow, I was listening to Brother Sun, and you also have one called Glass Canyon that's very evocative, and I think that would also make a very good song in a soundtrack.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I would love for any of those songs to be included in the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. So that's something that a lot of your contemporaries, it seems like that's the holy grail now. If I can just get my song into a soundtrack or a commercial, I'll be discovered. Is that something you pretty aggressively go after, or if it happens, it happens?
I as of now, so far, it's kind of like, fingers crossed that it comes across the right people to hear. Like, I'm not connected with any sort of like a licensing company or someone like pushing for that, which I probably will look into. But that kind of thing actually happened with my previous band, The Photographic. Like 2 songs ended up being used in a couple different CSI Miami episodes just due to someone, I guess, on their production team or at CBS hearing it and then contacted us about using them. So nice. Hopefully an opportunity like that could arise again.
Oh, very much so. Well, I'm really curious, since you play all your instruments, do your songwriting, producing, singing. What is your studio experience like? How quickly do you record? How long do you take crafting your songs? What's the C-Tie studio experience like?
Well, right now I kind of have a home studio set up in a spare room. And honestly, for each song, it's been different with everything. Sometimes the initial melody will come quick, and I'll go in and demo that, and just sometimes it'll come together really fast. Like that song Glass Canyon, they came together within probably a couple days, and then Brother Sun took the course probably like I had the idea, and then I didn't really execute it until, I don't know, a while after, like just messing with things. Like nothing was really clicking the way I wanted it to sound. And sometimes it has to do with just the creative process of it, and then also sometimes the technical process of just me not getting the sound I want, because I'm still like every year as I'm doing it, like I'm constantly learning better production techniques and different things to make it sound better. So it's always a learning process as that goes, and sometimes sometimes it's a technical issue that holds me back as opposed to a creative block or something like that.
Well, we're going to have to wrap up in a moment, but before then, I want to make sure everyone listening knows how to find you online, and especially where to go to buy Neon Dream when it comes out. So where should people go online to stock you?
Well, tomorrow, tomorrow is the 9th. So, tomorrow it should be available on most streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google Play. You could also buy the song on iTunes, and I'll probably also be just giving it away as a free download on my SoundCloud page as well. Great.
And what is your website?
My website is byseetai, SEETAI.com.
Excellent. Well, I've been there, and it's a great place to hear some of your previous stuff and learn more. So I definitely encourage people to go there. So wrapping up, I just would like to know, what is your ultimate dream with Neon Dream? If you could predict anything or make anything happen with the song, what would be your number one wish for it?
I mean, I guess the obvious one would be for it to somehow catch as many people's attention as possible and to blow up into as big of a track as it possibly can. And it would be great, like you mentioned, getting it into some soundtracks, whether movie placement, TV placement, anything like that. Ultimately those would be my wishes for it.
All right. And a bonus question, since you collaborate a lot, what would be your dream collaboration? Who would you most like to work with?
Ooh. That's a tough one. Because there's people I would probably like to co-write songs with, but I think overall a consistent person who's always been an inspiration to me, and would definitely love the opportunity to have him produce or work on a song would probably have to be Brian Eno.
Brian Eno. Well, that's an excellent choice, and I can definitely hear some of his influence in your work. So let's put out some positive vibes and see Neon Dream go number one, and see you work with Brian Eno someday. How's that?
That's quite the dream.
All right, well, I wish you the best of luck, and I will look for Neon Dream when it hits the airwaves tomorrow.
Great, and thanks so much for having me on here.